So first off, I would like to thank everyone for logging in today. I know it's a busy week for many of y'all, but I promise this would be worth it. So I just want to start off with a land acknowledgement. I'm sitting in Toronto. Toronto is the dish with one spoon territory. It is a treaty between the Anishinaabe, Mississaugas, and Haudenosaunee, Haudenosaunee. We are working on this land in a spirit of peace, friendship, and respect. The dish with one spoon represents our collective responsibility to ensure that the dish is never empty, which includes taking care of the land and creatures that live here. I would like to express my sincere thanks to Immigrant Employment Council of BC for extending their support in developing this workshop with us. They are truly the experts in employer engagement. Employers are very, very busy people, as many of you already know. And getting them interested in newcomer issues is something that can be very, very challenging for many settlement service organizations. But the Immigrant Employment Council makes this look very easy, but I know it isn't very easy. So today they're going to share with us some of their very intricate secrets, I believe. So this workshop will start off with a very short presentation from Daniel Chen. I will let Daniel introduce himself during his presentation. It will be following his presentation, we will go into two breakout sessions, which will be moderated by Rania and Daniel. So please stick around after the presentation because the breakout sessions will be very, very useful to tailoring some of the things that we will learn from Daniel's presentation for your own use cases. I had a sneak peek at the presentation slides, and I think many of you would be very, very interested in sticking around for those breakout sessions. After the breakout sessions, we will reconvene in the main room for a summary and concluding remarks from Rania and Daniel. So just a little bit of housekeeping. Please keep your mics turned off throughout the presentation, as well as, and then you can turn them on again during the breakout sessions when you're ready to speak. But throughout the presentation, please also include any questions that you have for the presenters, and then I will collect those questions. And then when we return from the breakout sessions, I can also pose them to Daniel and Rania. But of course, during the breakout sessions, you can also ask them those questions. So without any further delay, I would like Daniel to bring up his slides and present some of his work to us. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Ty. My name is Daniel Chen. I'm with the Employer Learning and Inclusion Specialist with IACBC, and I'm here presenting with Rania, who I'll not let her speak too much because she's in a bit of discomfort with some dental stuff yesterday. So let me just bring up the slide here. So you should see the number 7%. Does everyone see that? Yeah, okay, great. So 7%, this crucial statistic represents the percentage of services provided by service provider organizations. And it's a statistic that really underscores the potential for growth and in servicing the immigrant communities through digital means. Imagine you are at an event and someone asks you, what do you do? I'm an employer engagement specialist, you answer. Well, cue to confused looks and wild guesses. So today we are here to demystify this title and uncover the value of employer engagement in the age of social and digital media. Next, please. I also want to, in the spirit of truth and unity, wish to acknowledge that IACBC is situated on the traditional lands of the Coast Salish peoples, including the Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, and Musqueam First Nations. Next slide, please. Immigrant Employment Council of BC connects employers to immigrant talent. We do this in part by our valued partnerships with various settlement service provider organizations. And together, we're working to support newcomer professionals to find meaningful work and to successfully integrate into our communities across the region. IACBC is a proud member of the National Network of Immigrant Employment Councils, which is a collaborative body which builds effective and productive partnerships and employer-focused solutions. With localized knowledge and a national reach, the national network aims to significantly improve labor market outcomes for immigrants and support for a stronger Canadian economy. Next, please. Imagine the impact you can make by intentionally choosing to work with the right kind of employers in the right kind of way, connecting with them more deeply, discovering their unique needs with skill, offering tailored recommendations, taking proactive actions, and providing unwavering service. Next, please. According to a recent study published in February 2023 and last updated in June, our partner IAC, the Toronto Region Immigrant Employment Council, TRIAC, with the support of the Social Research and Development Corporation Canada, identified that employers currently engaging with SPOs, service providing organizations, do so primarily to source and screen candidates for positions and connect employees with training needs, which helps employers, especially small and medium-sized enterprises, to reduce their hiring training expenses, and also to help them deliver on their corporate social responsibility, mandate, and equity, diversity, and inclusion goals. Next slide, please. The report's Effective Employer Engagement in Newcomer Skills Development Program Service Provider Organizations Guidebook also found that, quote, despite the potential for benefits, employer awareness of SPOs and respective engagement is low. Many employers in Canada are unaware of SPOs and how they can help to recruit, hire, and retain newcomers. The research shows that there is still a long way to go to increase employers' awareness of SPOs, to communicate the benefits of engaging with SPOs, and to build strong relationships with employers that can help better serve newcomer clients and address labor market needs, end quote. Next slide, please. So let's revisit this question of what do you do? So in the next little bit, we're going to help you say, you know, I'm an employer engagement or employer outreach specialist, but really primarily to come to a shared understanding of how we all contribute to increased involvement of employers to create better employment outcomes for immigrants coming to Canada. Next slide, please. This diagram is something that we invite you all today to do some self-reflection and to rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10, where 1 is low and 10 is high on your knowledge, skills, abilities as an employer engagement or outreach professional. We encourage you to write down this rating, and it will be helpful for you to think about what it is that you do to engage in employers in the SPO sector. Think specifically about how you actually do this. So what do you do and how do you do this? And in order to articulate that, then this will help you to better develop your value offering to your direct audience and your overall contribution to the larger system around you. So rate your competence and or your confidence in engaging with employers in your sector. By the end of this learning opportunity, we encourage you to come back to rate yourself again to discover any changes and areas of opportunities you may wish to prioritize moving forward. Next slide, please. So here's a quick rundown of what we're going to be covering in the next 20 minutes or so. We're going to introduce the impact or employee impact framework, which is the 6-step engagement process. We're going to break out into 2 rooms where we will have you have a peer discussion with your colleagues in discussing the successes and challenges with employer engagement. And then we'll come back to the bigger room and end up with some insights and takeaways. We also have 2 documents for you to take away with you. One is the overall framework that you can take to reference with, and also another tip sheet on how to handle objections, which we will provide at the end of this presentation. Next slide, please. So here is the 6-step framework. Of course, we begin with the employer in the center of our engagement framework. And the 6 steps are beginning with prospect, connect, discover, recommend, act, and service. This is really I think that a lot of you have your own approach, and in terms of how you have your process and how you practice your business. But this is also giving you an option and our perspective on how you can have a disciplined approach to build it into your business practice, so that you are not scattered but more structured. So for those of you that are seasoned, you can hopefully take one or two pieces of what we're going to present today to build into your business practice. For those of you that are relatively new, this can build a foundation for how you move forward with employer engagement. So we will be going through a high-level overview using these foundational learning to navigate the framework in the digital technology and social media age. Next slide, please. So we're not going to go line by line through here, but what I'd like to point out is, so we begin with prospect, which is the digital discovery. So in the absence of access or investment to certain labor market indicators and tools, some of you may be using much more advanced tools, but here we are just talking about social media, which is open access to everyone. So when we're looking at prospecting, it's really about asking yourself some key questions. So how do we harness digital tools to spot potential partners that align with your mission? So then you can take a look at in the how section, you look at keywords, searches, data analytics, and industry groups to uncover hidden gems. So the example is you spot a tech company's innovative post online, and you venture to their comment section, find somebody else that's praising their diversity initiatives, and this could be a potential partner. So in the engagement funnel, before they become prospects, they're a lead. And so this is something that you can reach out to. And you also want to be mindful that in each of these stages, the employers might have an objections, and objections are not a hard no. They're just opportunities for you to dig a little bit deeper and to try different ways to engage with them. So in this particular prospect section, employers might ask, well, why should we engage with the settlement service on social media when we have our own recruitment channels? And it's also important to know, when do you move to the next step? So from prospecting and looking online and doing your research, you want to be able to move to the next step when you have curated a digital list of intriguing prospects, which in some ways they're called suspects. I don't know why they're called that, but when you put them into the funnel, they're called suspects or leads. And then once you have curated that list, you can move on to the next step, which is connect. Next slide, please. So when you connect, it's really about developing the conversation. So in here, we're talking about the digital space. So you may reach out to them through the social media channels. And so the question here is, how do we initiate these conversations online that mirror face-to-face authenticity? You craft personalized messages. You reach out via platforms like LinkedIn's InMail or Twitter or X direct message. And this could lead to employer word-of-mouth referrals. And so for the example, you send out personal connection requests and mention a recent article that the tech company shared on inclusion in the workplace. And again, be mindful of the employer objection in that they may say, well, is this just another generic connection request or a genuine interest? And in some of and also I just want to point out on the tip side, you want to be able to craft tailored connections. So it's not just the fact that you're sending out a generic email or a message, but you want to make sure that you are customized to them specifically so that they know that this is not a generic email or message. And when you know that you are ready to move to the next stage, discover, is when the employer responds positively and shows curiosity in your services. And the next slide, please. In the six-step engagement framework, discover is probably what is going to be the most valuable step in terms of discovering the employer's needs. So this is really about generating online empathy and understanding. And the key question here is, how can you infuse empathy into your online interactions that will truly connect with the employers? And this is really about striking a balance between professionalism and genuine engagement in this virtual environment. And you're going to be doing this by exploring the employer's online presence, the social media, the blog posts, and website to really gain a comprehensive understanding of their needs. So again, for example, you mentioned the employer's article resonated with you in your organization's values, and they respond enthusiastically. There's a connection. But in the discover stage is really asking the right questions in terms of really understanding the employer's true needs. And they may have lots of needs. And then you show your value by then helping them prioritize those needs and addressing them accordingly. Because you don't want to jump to a solution right away because you haven't generated the value that you would provide. And if you're just jumping to a solution, and we all know what it feels like to be sold to, as opposed to being helped to be led to our own decision making in that process. And so on the tip side, you want to be able to study the employer profiles to understand their company culture, their values, and recent achievements. You want to monitor online conversations, and you want to be able to then create the tools to help you gather insights on their specific needs and challenges, whether it's surveys or just reaching out to them directly online. And so discover, you're really wanting to move the employer from low interest to high interest, and that's a big step. And so you will be probably facing objections throughout this conversation. And again, objections are not a hard no. It's just the employers are asking you those questions in order to really have you provide those answers for them. So it's not about that you can never answer them or give them responses, but you should always go back to asking the right questions in order to make sure that once when you ask if there's any objections and the employer says, nope, there's no more objections, then that's when you know that you've discovered their needs completely. So that's when you can move on to the next stage, which is recommend. So recommend is then presenting the options to your employer partner. Now, at this stage, you don't want to be able to you don't want to present one option because that won't give the employer a sense that they have a choice. But then you don't want to give them too many options because then that'll leave them with sort of paralysis in terms of deciding which one. So you want to give them enough options, maybe up to 3, so that but you're guiding them to the solution that that will be best suited for their needs at that time. So however you prioritize those needs, then those solutions will fit those needs. So the key question here is, how do you creatively package your recommendations using digital tools to leave a lasting impression? So for example, you prepare a video presentation showcasing the success in working with previous employers. You share this with your current prospect, and they are impressed by the real world impact. And again, objections will be throughout this interaction, and they might express skepticism about the effectiveness of online presentations compared to face-to-face. And so at this point, then you have to decide, what is the value in terms of actually reaching out, having those phone calls, having those face-to-face meetings with the employers as best as you can, if you're obviously in the same areas. And some of the tips, you can create content pieces, articles, infographics, and those are just additional resources that will just show the value that you can add to helping employers optimize their workforce. And once the employer expresses enthusiasm for your proposed solutions and indicates readiness to proceed, and that's when you can move to the next step, which is act. So next slide, please. So act. This is really about executing on the recommendations that you provide to the employers. So how can you effectively leverage digital platforms to establish clear communication and collaboration throughout the execution phase? What are you doing? So you can use various digital platforms and tools where you've successfully coordinated online and in-person efforts with the employers. So whether it's using Slack or Teams or Trello or any of those digital applications and tools to communicate during the execution phase. So if you are unable to get together in person, then you want to be able to use digital tools to communicate like that. And then you want to create webinars or host online training sessions to make sure that everyone's on board with the recommendations that you have selected with your employer partner. And then use other portals such as, our ICB Job Connect, LinkedIn, and then post opportunities to facilitate the hiring process. So you can use.
Sorry, someone is saying that they're not able to see the slides. Is that the case for everyone? I'm not sure.
Oh.
I'm seeing the slides fine on my end.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Keep going, Daniel. Sorry about that.
Okay. Thank you. So in the act stage again, or the step, you might again want to address any objections. And again, objections may come even at the very last step. So even when you're in the process of executing on the recommendations, an employer might be riding on the subway and look in the newspaper and see something else that might generate some interest, and they'll come back to you and say, hey, this other organization is doing this. What can you do for me? And then you're going to have to address that as well. So objections will occur throughout the process, and it's just up to you to be able to address those accordingly in order to keep the employer partner on board. And so after you execute on the recommendations and you provide a solution, that is obviously not the end of your relationship with that employer partner. So this is the stage then you want to move into service. If you can move to the next slide, please. And service is really about continuous online and in-person support. So we're talking about digital social media opportunities to engage with employer partners. And that's just one channel to use as part of your business practice. And really, this framework is to give you a disciplined approach. And so I know some folks might maybe wing it, and they think that that's a way that they've done things before. But then when objections happen, then they don't know how to address it. So being prepared is really one of the key aspects of how you want to approach your employer meetings and communication, because that's going to help you facilitate a smooth, proactive, and also not something that you're going to have to repeat again. So repetitive meetings are really not useful. So you don't want to have to go every meeting that you have, go back and revisit some of the talking points that you've had before, but you want to be able to be progressive in terms of your meetings. So in the service part, you are then able to, if the employer partner is satisfied with the solution and they're happy with your service, then here's an opportunity for you to be able to ask for more business, or to develop that relationship where the employer will look to you the next time they need to use your services for optimizing their workforce. Then they can refer you to their circle of influence. They can refer you to other partners. And so the service part is part of that engagement process. Whether you introduce the employer to other partners or other colleagues in other areas, then this is the key part. So the process is dynamic and it continues to go on. This is one of the key questions you want to be able to ask yourself at this stage is, how can you effectively leverage digital platforms to maintain the clear communication and collaboration that you've already established? So here's the 6 engagement framework. So what we would like to do is to break you into 2 breakout rooms where myself and Stan will be in one, and Rania will moderate the other. And really, it's just about taking a look at your successes and challenges that you've had with employer engagement that you've already encountered and that you are experiencing currently right now. So Stein, I will let you break us into some rooms, and I think I'm in room 1 and Ronnie is in room 2.
Yeah, so you should see a dialog box which invites you to a specific room. So you can join and you'll be directed into one of the breakout rooms. Thank you. So yeah, thanks everyone for sticking around for the breakout sessions. So I think Rania and Danielle, is he still here? Oh, there he is. Okay. So yeah, I think they're going to give us a rundown of everything that was discussed. Sounds good.
Ronnie, would you like to go first, or I can go first? Yep. Okay. All right. So in our room, we really talked about looking at it from 4 different perspectives that all made into one. Looking at social media as a channel to look at opportunities, having a framework. So it's one is the sort of goal. The framework is the behavior, and then also we looked at some of the stories and opportunities and that's out there. Valentina talked about intercultural assessment as being an important tool that that employers used to be quite resistant towards, and then there was a shift where now employers are actually really requesting to do the intercultural assessment, competency assessment. And we also talked about some folks were able to use social media in terms of, and I think one of the realizations is we are all using online tools. We may not necessarily think, oh, it's a social media digital way we're doing, but we're online, we're checking people's websites. So, and we look at articles, we may come across a tweet that we don't go into their Twitter space, but we see a tweet that's on a Google search or something like that. So I think people are using that. I think Kim was mentioning also too, in terms of smaller organizations, it's still more of a in-person, face-to-face outreach, which is important. Whereas larger organizations, in terms of scale, they may use online digital tools much more often. But everyone in the room was open to the sense of exploring other channels to engage with employers. And I think there was also discussion that this framework, the 6 steps, is not necessarily only employer focused, right? It's something that they can work with newcomers in terms of relationship building. It's just a disciplined step-by-step approach so that exactly where you are in that customer journey, whether it's a new immigrant or whether it's an employer. It helps you to then identify where you're at, how do you handle objections, how to move that client forward. And that's a dynamic, continuous framework. So that's something. I don't know, Sandy or Daisy, was there other? Oh, and somebody mentioned a program FAST, which is great. Like Valentina mentioned FAST as a program to look at as well.
Yeah. Daniel, I just want to
yeah.
add the DEI piece because I think that was really important. So one of the things that came up at the very end before we got shut down, we were in the heat of the moment too, was around the whole DEI or the JEDI space, and really how to engage employers in that. And I think what's important to take away from that is, well, at least from our perspective, you need to meet people where they're at, right? Because at the end of the day, a small employer, their immediate need be just getting talent. That doesn't mean they're not interested in being more inclusive, but at the end of the day, it's kind of like the Maslow's hierarchy. You got to meet your basic needs first, right? And so, but that being said, once they understand how to connect with talent or they understand the value, then you can begin to move them along the continuum, I said. And I think what's important is also look at from this perspective of systems change around employer engagement. Like, what are your solutions? Like, what do you need in terms of kind of newcomer talent? How can we help you to create more immigrant inclusive workplaces? So it's not just about connecting them to talent, it's about actually looking at systems change. They can better leverage the talent and better retain the talent, and that the newcomer has a better opportunity to actually grow within that organization. So I just kind of think we just kind of talked about not being mindful about commoditizing talent. Like, they're not like objects, right? They're part of a much bigger perspective. So thank you. So
and I just want to add one more thing. Sorry, Rania. One more thing is the fact that this framework will also match up to the customer journey. So you're moving from their no interest to low interest to high interest to convinced to satisfied, and so the framework will match. So if you're at the recommend stage and they're still at the no interest stage, that's not going to be useful, right? So this framework also will help you identify where you are, like Daisy was saying, where you are in that journey, and to match it up with the client journey as well. So that's a useful way to use the framework. So that's just wanted to add that. Rania.
Sorry, Alka's hand was up. Sorry.
Sorry.
Oh, no, it's okay. Okay.
Awesome. Okay. Well, our room discussion was around crafting authentic online connections and being able to kind of build those authentic connections. So we started first on building digital authentic connections, but as you can imagine, and as this beautiful community always is, we went into pain points and how we can help each other, and then ended up with ideas of that we'd like to take forward. So we highlighted the importance of making sure that when you are reaching out, that they are very much very human, very authentic and meaningful messages, not just messages that are just, you know, a plug-in. It has to highlight common interests, and some people have shared great examples about how being brief and accessible, simple messages have helped, specifically because they were easy to inspire connection. And Shauna from ISSBC, for example, you know, shared more than one example of colleagues who have been working on their own professional profiles to be able to really generate and craft those meaningful connections with professionals and employers online. We did talk about, of course, also fears of how that is how AI could be a threat to the authenticity piece. And we were all wondering, we wonder how it would look like. And we also wondered how AI might not be just a solution for a solution throughout the framework, but possibly through some of the steps in the framework, like prospecting, for example, right? Then we kind of moved into a very dynamic and conversation around our pain points in building relationships beyond that. We talked about incentivizing. Joanne from Achieve, I think it's Joanne. Joanne, am I right? You could just kind of scream out for me. Really shared a lot of great examples on incentives to be able to create or maintain connections. What are the value and what are the pitfalls in that, and then bringing it down really to being able to build that trust. And we all shared the common pain of how building trust really requires high touch and a lot of effort. And that's where we all really focused on the idea of, since we were starting to build a community of practice in that room, we all really thought that the importance of having a community of practice around employer engagement within the sector it would be a very important idea. Alka really kind of brought it home with that as well, and on different levels. We also talked about how engagement is very different in different stages, and therefore being able to understand that and the role we each play is also very important. And then we had Christine, who had an idea where when you're looking around the room and seeing how there's a lot of profession, like you bring in your own circle and your own networks into the sector, but maybe a community of practice would then be able to help you access within the community of practice different sectors to be able to help you. So, you know, someone who has experience in a given industry, they have access to that industry, but maybe there's someone else in a different organization who have a bigger pool of access to a different sector, and being able to have a community of practice where we're sharing this for the interest of clients, whether employers or immigrants, would be a great idea that everyone was excited about in the room. Finally, on the framework, we all agreed that, you know, like it's nice, clean, and simple to follow, but we also highlighted how it doesn't really start and stop in a place. It's very iterative, and maybe your first interaction can be at the service and then move around from there, and not necessarily always start at prospecting. So it is a very flexible and fluid tool to be able to use, but it's just a matter of being able to organize your approach to building those relationships, whether online or in person. And sorry, one last thing. While we do have concerns always about authenticity and human relations over digital tools, there is an advantage to, especially when it comes to employer outreach, that digital tools have also allowed us to have more access to build relations with employers. It's being able to, or the effort that you need to put in to keep them meaningful and intentional. That's where the high touch pieces, whether digital or online, that's where the effort really comes in. I think that's it. Anyone in the room, if you have anything else to add, please do, if I forgot something. And thank you all for the great conversation. I truly enjoyed it. And I think we need to do this more. Thanks, Stein, for bringing us together.
Absolutely, yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Daniel. Thank you, Rania. This was an excellent workshop session. I learned a lot from it, and I'm sure some of the other organizations here did also learn something interesting. So just to close off the session, I just would like to thank everyone for their participation and for sticking around through the breakout sessions, and also for being so engaged with the conversation. We definitely have to take this forward, and we'll definitely try to have more workshops like this, more conversations on employer engagement, because it's an important part of building partnerships with the rest of the community. And I know this is an important next step for many organizations, and they want to start moving more in that direction. So I just wanted to again just thank everyone for the engagement, and also wanted to give a shout out to IRCC for helping us with putting together the workshop through the STI grant, and I'm hopefully looking forward to more conversations in the future.
And there's still the
Yes.
the additional supplement documents that is
Exactly. Yeah. So I'll send out a follow-up email to soon after this, after we close the workshop. And yes, I think Daniel, you will be will you be sending us the slides as well, in addition to the supplement?
yeah, well, we can do that. Yes, we can do
Okay.
that.
Yeah. So we'll be sharing the slides plus 2 supplementary documents which summarize a lot of what has been said. And along with that, we will also send a survey for your responses. So please respond to the survey. Tell us how we did. And yeah, thank you again.